What if the silence of a Hollywood star was louder than any confession? What if the questions she has spent months running from are about to trap her in a room with no escape? Blake Lively has fought every motion, every deadline, every demand, but the judge has spoken, and now the deposition looms like a storm. She cannot outrun. The question isn't if the truth comes out, it's how devastating it will be when it does. What if the flawless image of Blake Lively, long celebrated as the queen of Hollywood elegance, the embodiment of charm and the poster child for a picture, perfect life was nothing more than an illusion, a carefully polished performance hiding turbulence beneath the surface behind the dazzling lights of the red carpet? Behind the perfect photographs that flood Instagram, and behind the legacy of romantic comedies and blockbuster features, there lies a storm that has now burst into the open. Blake Lively, once viewed as untouchable, now finds herself locked in the crosshairs of a courtroom showdown. A confrontation so volatile that it threatens to unravel not only her career, but the very image she has guarded for years like a jewel in a safe. And the whispers only grow louder, whispers that she is no longer Hollywood's golden girl, but instead a star trapped in a battle where the stakes are not only sky high, they are existential. At the center of this storm is her clash with actor-director Justin Baldoni and his powerhouse attorney Bryan Freedman, a figure notorious in Hollywood for his razor-sharp tactics and fearless style. Blake has tried desperately to keep control, grasping at every possible maneuver to silence the voices around her. Reports suggest she has attempted to use legal gag orders, normally reserved for the most extreme circumstances like national security trials or cases involving the safety of jurors. These are serious tools, blunt weapons of the legal system designed to prevent the flow of information to lock the truth away, yet allegedly she tried to wield them like shields, desperate to stop Baldoni and Freedman from speaking. But the question lingers, what is she hiding? What truth could be so dangerous that the mere thought of it surfacing sends her into a scramble to control every narrative, every whisper, every rumor, every courtroom filing attempts that judges have reportedly dismissed, tossing out gag order requests as swiftly as Hollywood tossed out her infamous Green Lantern flop. Each failed attempt does not silence the speculation. Instead, it amplifies it, building suspense and fueling curiosity. Because the more she resists, the more people wonder just what she is so desperate to bury. Is it secrets from her career behind the scenes? Stories of power? Struggles and tension with directors? Is it personal revelations that could shatter her brand as Hollywood's wholesome star? Or is it whispers of behavior on set that could stain the carefully constructed image forever? The offhand remark that she is a bit of a brat suddenly takes on the weight of something larger. Perhaps not just a stray comment, but the edge of a hidden iceberg. And as this battle unfolds, even her greatest weapons, the flawless smile, the carefully curated image, the network of Hollywood fixers cannot shield her in the courtroom, because under the gaze of a judge, there is no red carpet, no magazine cover, no carefully written script. There is only the law, and the law is merciless. Blake attempted another move, perhaps. Her boldest yet illegal gamble, ripped straight from a Hollywood script to wave away the entire case as though it never existed. With a motion to dismiss her legal team, marched into the courtroom with star-studded confidence and a simple message. This is nothing. This is trivial. It should all go away. But the judge was not swayed, unimpressed by glamour. Unmoved by the carefully rehearsed arguments, the motion was denied. And with that denial, the attempt to erase the problem collapsed instead, of vanishing. The lawsuit loomed larger, a shadow that stretched across her career and her reputation. This was no minor misunderstanding. This was a storm gathering strength, and Blake could no longer pretend it was not there as each door closed. Gag orders denied dismissal, rejected, the path narrowed, and what lay at the end of that path was unavoidable. The deposition, and for many that might seem like a routine step, a bland conference room, a procedure filled with legal jargon and quiet note-taking. But for celebrities like Blake Lively, it is a crucible. A moment where the mask of control is ripped away and the raw truth must be spoken under oath, where every word is recorded, where every silence, every pause, every flicker of discomfort becomes a part of the official record. And the thought of sitting across from Bryan Freedman, relentless, calculating, unflinching, has reportedly struck fear in Blake like nothing else. Because here there are no stylists, no publicists, no choreographed exits. Once you are in that chair under penalty of perjury, the game is stripped down to its raw core, and the whispers suggest this is the moment she has been trying so desperately to avoid. The question is why? Why would someone with nothing to hide fight so hard to dodge a deposition? Why not step into that room, defend herself, clarify the truth, and move on? Unless, of course, the truth she fears is more damaging than silence could ever be. The narrative from her side paints Freedman as aggressive, ruthless, maybe even biased. They cast him as the wolf hunting her down unfairly. But skeptics argue this may be nothing more than a strategy, an attempt to frame him as the villain and discredit his line of questioning before it even begins, because if he is painted as hostile, maybe his words can be dismissed. Maybe the world will see him as unfair rather than effective. But the harder she pushes this angle, the more it reeks of desperation, because history has shown Freedman is not easily shaken. He has dismantled defenses before with surgical precision, and if he already knows the right questions to ask, if he already holds fragments of the truth, then the battle becomes less about surviving the questions and more about surviving the answers. Blake Lively, the master of image control, the golden starlet who has dictated every photo, every interview, every narrative that reached the public eye, may soon find herself in the one place where control slips through her fingers, where every secret, every carefully hidden truth, every contradiction is dragged into the light, and there, under the sterile fluorescent lamps of a deposition room, stripped of all Hollywood glamour, she would face the moment she has feared, most: the unraveling of the facade. The deposition looms like a shadow across the horizon, and for Blake Lively, the thought of entering that sterile conference room is no small detail. It is the crossroads where her carefully curated public life collides with the raw machinery of the legal system. For years, she has built an empire on the image of being untouchable, relatable, yet aspirational, glamorous yet grounded. But none of that matters when the recorder is switched on and the oath is sworn, because in that room, there are no fashion spreads, no photo shoots, no sympathetic talk show hosts. There is only the relentless pace of questioning from Bryan Freedman and his team. Every hesitation, every shift in tone, every glance away from the table becomes a clue, a weapon, waiting to be wielded, and for an actress trained to deliver lines flawlessly in front of cameras. The irony is brutal here. There are no lines to rehearse, no takes to redo, and no director to yell cut. What makes it more chilling is that Freedman is not just any lawyer. His reputation precedes him across Hollywood as the kind of litigator who does not waste words, who walks into the room with precision and leaves with answers. And this is exactly what Blake appears to dread most, because if he has prepared his questions well, and if he already possesses information that ties into her past decisions, her private conversations, or her behind-the-scenes behavior, then every response risks detonating like a landmine. The question that hangs over this drama is why. Why has she resisted this deposition with such extraordinary force? Countless other stars have endured them and survived, bruised perhaps, but not destroyed. So what is it about this case that makes her fight with such desperation? Is there a revelation tied to her career, a dispute buried under NDAs that could come to light? Is there a personal truth that conflicts with the brand she has cultivated for over a decade? Or is it a story whispered among insiders, a narrative she has tried again and again to bury? Because if that truth slips through the cracks, it could rewrite how the world perceives her for years. Blake has had an army of protectors around her, a Hollywood fortress designed to absorb any scandal and spin it into something forgettable. Think of the tools she has called upon, from publicists who know how to twist headlines to talent agencies capable of burying bad press under waves of positive coverage, to even her closest allies. Powerful figures like Taylor Swift, who could post a supportive message at the perfect moment and shift attention back to friendship and glamour. But in this case, none of those weapons seem to matter, because the courtroom does not bend to charm. And it does not bow to star power. A judge does not care how many magazine covers you have graced, or how many designers send you their newest collections. The courtroom is a place where only truth, evidence, and credibility matter. And that is the storm Blake is facing, because no matter how much influence she has amassed, she cannot silence a judge with celebrity sparkle. Every failed attempt to dismiss, every rejected gag order has chipped away at the illusion of control that she has maintained for so long, and with each defeat, the storm grows more violent. There is something Shakespearean about this reversal of fortune. Blake once walked through Hollywood as though insulated by destiny, a figure immune to the ordinary troubles that plagued lesser stars. But now the wheel has turned and the empire she built on grace and poise trembles under the weight of relentless legal reality. It is not merely a fight over a single case, it is the exposure of a vulnerability she has never shown before, and the industry is watching with fascination and perhaps with a tinge of satisfaction. There is a certain dark thrill in watching perfection falter, in seeing the curtain pulled back, and the star revealed to be struggling like everyone. Else the whispers ripple through social media, forums, tabloids, and late-night commentary shows. Some believe she is unfairly targeted, that Freedman and Baldoni have pushed this into a spectacle. Others believe this is accountability long overdue, a reckoning for a star who has long benefited from a system that protects image above truth. The question of loyalty becomes a dividing line. Are you Team Blake, convinced that she is misunderstood, trapped in a web of legal theatrics? Or are you siding with Baldoni and Freedman, waiting for the veil of glamour to finally be lifted, whatever side the audience chooses? One truth cannot be ignored. The suspense has become irresistible, because the more Blake resists, the louder the speculation grows. What could possibly be so damaging that she would rather endure the optics of desperation than step into that room and answer questions? The answer remains hidden, but the clock is ticking, and with every day that passes, the sense of inevitability grows, because eventually the walls close in and the deposition becomes not a choice but an obligation. And when that day comes, when Blake sits across from Bryan Freedman with the recorder running and the oath binding her every word, the question is not only what she will say, but how the world will react when the mask of perfection slips. The weight of silence can be louder than any spoken word, and in Blake Lively's case, that silence has begun to echo through every corridor of Hollywood. Because while her lawyers file motions and while the press churns out speculation, she has chosen a strategy that seems more fragile with each passing week: to say nothing, to appear untouched, to keep her world staged as though nothing is unraveling behind the curtain. But silence in the face of mounting pressure becomes its own kind of admission. Not of guilt, perhaps, but of fear. And the audience senses it. The journalists sense it. The industry, veterans sense it. And most dangerously, the legal team on the other side senses it. Bryan Freedman thrives on silence. He thrives on the gaps between words, because every gap is a place where he can insert pressure and twist it tighter. He knows that silence cannot protect someone forever, that the courtroom feeds on testimony, and that the longer Blake avoids the inevitable, the harsher the spotlight will be when she can no longer hide. The parallels to Greek tragedy are impossible to ignore. A figure who seemed destined for untouchable greatness, brought down not by an external force, but by the slow accumulation of choices, a resistance to truth, a reliance on image, and a refusal to step fully into the storm facing her. When history looks back at this saga, the analyst will not focus only on what was revealed, but also on how she fought against revelation, how each failed attempt to delay, each motion denied by the judge, each whisper leaking to the press combined into a portrait of a star at war with inevitability. And what makes this war so intoxicating to watch is that it is not fought with swords or spectacle, but with questions and answers, with transcripts that will one day surface and tell a story in black and white, a story that no amount of red carpet appearances can erase. Her allies, who once appeared unwavering, are beginning to shift subtly. No one has openly abandoned her yet, but insiders whisper that calls are less frequent invitations. Fewer even social media interactions have slowed. And in Hollywood, that silence speaks volumes. Taylor Swift, once seen as a fortress of loyalty, has chosen her words more carefully lately. And though she has not turned against Blake, she has not marched publicly into the fire for her either. Perhaps she knows the risk, perhaps she understands that aligning too closely with someone under siege can backfire even on the most powerful of stars. And if Taylor Swift, with her unmatched fan base and cultural sway, chooses caution, then what does that say about the calculations being made behind closed doors? The psychology of the moment becomes its own fascination. How does a star accustomed to applause, to adoration, to carefully orchestrated praise prepare for hours of unfiltered, unrelenting questions? How does she steel herself for the possibility that her own words under oath might become the very headlines she has spent years trying to avoid? There is no stylist for this, no makeup artist who can cover hesitation, no director who can shout cut when a sentence comes out wrong, only the cold permanence of the transcript, And perhaps that is why the thought of the deposition rattles Blake to her core, because it is permanence carved into record, unalterable, undeniable, and stripped of the polish that has defined her career. Once those words are spoken, they belong not to her, but to the system, to the attorneys, to the public who will dissect them line by line, searching for cracks, contradictions, or revelations that might reshape the entire narrative. The irony is that in seeking to protect her image, she may have only amplified the drama around her resistance, because people are drawn to mystery, and the more she resists, the more powerful the mystery becomes. It is no longer simply a legal skirmish. It is a cultural event. A battle that has grown beyond court filings and into the collective imagination of the audience who watch, with bated breath wondering what truth could be so dangerous, what secret so volatile that even a star of her magnitude trembles at the thought of exposure. The walls are closing tighter and the oxygen thinner, and for Blake Lively, the stage is set for a reckoning she has fought so hard to delay. As the final act of this unfolding drama nears, the tension coils tighter around Blake Lively, because every attempt to shield herself from deposition has been denied, and every tactic to push discovery further into the distance has been stripped away by a judge who appears immune to celebrity aura and polished defenses. And so the image of her sitting in that room beneath the hum of fluorescent lights across from Bryan Freedman looms larger and larger each day, not as speculation, but as inevitability. And inevitability is the one force no star, no matter how powerful, can escape. The irony is stark, that a career built on control, on precision, on carefully crafted image, could now hinge on a moment she cannot control, on questions she cannot script, and on answers she cannot edit for public consumption. And this is why the industry watches with both dread and fascination, because what is at stake is not only her case, but the myth of perfection she has so carefully preserved. If she falters, if she contradicts herself, if she reveals even a glimpse of weakness, it will not only reverberate in court, but across headlines, tabloids, social platforms, and whispered conversations at industry parties. The ripple effect could be career-altering, and perhaps that is why Hollywood itself seems to hold its breath. Stars who once appeared shoulder to shoulder with her at premieres seem cautious to align themselves too closely. Now agents and executives calculate the risk of public ties to someone under siege, and publicists draft two statements, one in case she emerges intact, another in case the deposition detonates into revelation. And still through it all, Blake has chosen silence, which once was her shield, but now has become the sound of dread building louder than any spoken denial, because silence in Hollywood is never neutral. It is a signal, a hesitation, a confession without words. Bryan Freedman understands this better than anyone, and he waits not with frustration, but with patience, knowing that silence is its own trap, because the longer it lasts, the greater the anticipation becomes, and anticipation is his weapon. When that room finally opens and Blake is sworn in, the silence will shatter into words, into testimony, into transcript, and those words will carry more weight precisely because of how long they were withheld. The legal storm has already redrawn the contours of her world, but the deposition promises to be the eye of the hurricane, the place where her public image, her private truth, and the machinery of law collide, and from that collision, something will break. Whether it is her opponent's strategy or her own carefully built facade remains to be seen, but break it will, and the public will not look away. They will lean closer, transfixed by the spectacle of a star at her most vulnerable moment, caught between the myth she has lived and the truth she must finally face, because in the end, no amount of glamour can rewrite the record. No red carpet can erase sworn testimony, and no curated silence can protect against the raw weight of inevitability. The storm circling Blake Lively has reached a point where silence can no longer protect her, and the legal process is closing in, with a force she cannot control. For months, she has fought with motions, delays, and the subtle armor of celebrity influence, but each failed attempt has only sharpened the inevitability of what lies ahead. The deposition is no longer a possibility. It is destiny, and destiny does not bend for image status or carefully managed narratives. What makes this moment so gripping is the uncertainty. No one knows what truths will emerge when the questions begin. No one knows what answers she will give or what contradictions might surface. Yet everyone senses that something powerful is hiding just beyond the edge of silence, and that once it is spoken, nothing will be the same. The glamour of red carpets, the glow of endorsements, the illusion of untouchable grace, all of it could collapse under the weight of a single transcript line. And that is why this story has become larger than a single legal battle. It is about power meeting accountability, about myth colliding with truth. Hollywood is watching, fans are watching, rivals are watching. Even those who once stood at her side are calculating how close they can afford to remain. When the moment comes, when the recorder clicks on and the oath is sworn, the world will finally see what Blake Lively has fought so hard to keep hidden. The only question left is whether she will emerge stronger for having faced it, or whether the image she has protected for so long will fracture forever under the crushing weight of truth.